Josh, welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's really nice to meet you.
Absolutely.
So, how's work? How are things going?
Work is going well. It seems like it's a challenge every day. Coming in, seeing who I'm going to be able to help that day or who I need to follow up with. Just kind of keeping in touch with everyone, keep that momentum going that people have, and make sure they're staying committed to getting help.
Absolutely. Did you survive the frozen tundra and all the weather and everything? Okay?
5 days without power, but we managed to make it with a fireplace and several blankets.
Wow, I got lucky where I'm at. We never lost power. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, we were blessed. It was like, man, please don't let us lose power. It was just and I'm sitting there watching the lines, gather ice on them, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, please stop.
Interestingly enough, our neighbor actually did not lose power, so it was kind of, we got to see their lights on every night, and meanwhile we're curled up inside.
Nice. You're an employee here. You help put people into treatment.
Right.
You are in recovery yourself.
That is correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about your journey, maybe from the beginning, what got you into whatever substance it was, and then how you got help and where you are?
Absolutely. So I actually used to play in bands and would be out several nights a week, and I think especially younger, some of that actually introduced a lot of the nightlife to me, and this whole being around drugs and alcohol, and almost feeling like that was part of the success. Like I had to do that to be around, which of course I learned is not true, but I definitely pushed the limits when I was a little bit younger. And I would try to get sober for someone else, a relationship or whatnot, and I just wasn't really committed myself to doing that. And it wasn't till later. I mean, I'm a pretty stubborn person, mm-hmm. and so I had to have some consequences. But I would try all kinds of different drugs, mixing alcohol, trying to different permutations of that, trying to find the recipe that would work. And of course, I laugh at myself now because I know that abstinence is the only thing that really works for me. And so I remember, I'd been drinking and doing drugs all night, and I had to go to work the next day. And I noticed that I had some friends there that were, I was hungover and everything. And then I had some friends that I knew they'd been up all night, but they were still going like 100%. And I was like, what are you guys on? And so I found out that they'd actually been doing speed, crystal meth specifically. And so I was like, well, let me try that. And my hangover was gone. I was completely customer service oriented and everything, just on top of everything. And it worked while it worked, but just not sustainable. And so, that just led me down a darker path. I mean, I've been to treatment several times. Like I said, I've tried different drugs. And so I'm all across the board on that. It just got to a point where I needed to accept that I'm just one of the people that I'm not going to find a formula that works for me, and that abstinence is what I need. And that's where I was introduced to treatment programs and also recovery programs to kind of stay connected with the community.
Yeah. So the music scene, I would assume there's a lot of alcohol, drug use, and things like that, but you're a musician, right?
Right.
And so you want to follow a dream in a sense. With all those substances being around, do you think that's what kind of brought you to use, or was there some other underlying issue that was going on? Or
definitely, and that's one of the things I learned later. I mean, I think there was the innocence of when I was younger and just having a good time, but that I think I had some friends that were able to kind of grow out of that, and I was not able to grow out of that. And as far as the music industry and the music scene, I mean, there are actually a lot of people in Nashville that are in recovery.
Yeah.
I had not been introduced to that side of things. And so I was, around the side that was, pulling all-nighters. And so, it took what it took for me to get to that point. But, I feel like some of my friends started getting a hold on things. They started settling into their careers and they were successful. And I was not. I was, I would get a job long enough to get somewhat successful with it, and then I would burn it all down to the ground, and then I did that several years over. I wasn't able to stay sober long enough to appreciate what I'd gained from my recovery. I didn't have the patience, and so I would just do this pattern of getting sober, and then getting a good job, staying healthy, and then I think I would get to a point where I I wasn't really working on myself enough. I was just sober. And so I would disrupt everything. And I was attracted to this chaos of building things up, tearing it down, like the city going up and then just crashing down to the ground. And I just was doing that over and over again. And so I just finally had to ask myself, like, what am I willing to do different to keep myself sober? And that took several years, but I mean, I got there, and I think that answer is different for everyone. But for me, it was, understanding that, like, I need to use every resource to stay sober. I cannot put my recovery into one thing, or I will find a way to manipulate myself, sabotage myself, and start using again. So for me, it's physical health, going to the gym, taking care of my mental health with therapy or whatnot, and of course a huge foundation and community and recovery to replace all the chaos that I used to find so attractive.
Yeah. I'm wondering, in a scene like the music scene, especially like around Nashville, and you mentioned a lot of people are in recovery that are
Right.
in the music scene. But is it harder being in that environment to look around and go, oh, I need help, or because you're probably constantly seeing people using around you.
Right.
You have to. At one point, was there a point where you went, this has got to stop?
I think there were several years there where I acknowledged that I was a drug addict and an alcoholic, but I literally had no idea what to do about it. And it wasn't until I was introduced to AA that I started to see and hear people that were in the music industry who had been, abusing drugs and alcohol like I was, but then they got sober, and I started seeing that side of it. Before that, I really didn't. I thought that, like, this is who I am. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. And there's nothing really to stop me, and I guess I'm just going to continue like this. But it was a very sad realization at the same time. And so, I would, treat that depression with using more of whatever was around.
I'm curious, because I've talked to people that thought they were going to go to treatment, and it was going to help them learn how to deal with whether it was alcohol or drugs, and were surprised that, oh my gosh, I can never use again. Did you have any realizations like that, or anything, come to any conclusions like, oh my God, this is it? Or
right. I think that's very common for people to have that fear of, like, oh my gosh, I can never use again. I would say I did have that, especially when I was younger, like, 24. I didn't want to close the book on that. It felt like the excitement was going to be over. And that led me out to start drinking and using again a couple of times at least. I think, though, as I got older, I realized that my priorities were shifting. And, I still love music. I'm not currently playing. I mean, I have everything at home. I'm still, playing my instruments, but I'm not into that lifestyle as much. I mean, I think so as I get older, I've settled down, and, I still have dreams and goals. They've just shifted. Like, I don't want to be that rock star anymore. And when I was younger, I felt that, like, if I stopped putting myself out there and being social, then I wasn't going to meet people, and my chances of, making it
Right.
would be decreased. And that wasn't ever true. I mean, there are plenty of people that have been successful without doing to their bodies what I did to myself.
Yeah.
But I think it's fortunate for me that, I don't think that for me, maybe that wasn't the purpose of it. And that, as I say, my goals kind of shifted, and I realized, like, what I can do to be happy and successful. And that meant redefining a lot of that. And so it shifted. I mean, now my idea of success isn't necessarily what a lot of people would consider. It's more minimal for me, basic things like being happy, having relationships with people, feeling cared for, being able to love other people,
Yeah.
and be able to show up in my life and participate.
Yeah. Now, were you a singer-songwriter type? Did you play an instrument in a band, or what was your role in music?
Well, so I started playing piano. When I was very young, and that was great. I think piano is the best instrument to learn because you learned the coordination, you learned how to read notes, melodies, bass, everything. And then from there, it just kind of grew to playing drums in high school band, and then bass, and then I was like, might as well pick up guitar. So I'm a multi-instrumentalist, and so in the bands, I would typically bounce around some. And it was not, the bands I've been in have been a little bit more experimental, not like straightforward songwriting. And so it was, I was able to jump around and experiment with different things and contribute to the music that way. So yeah, a little, little more unorthodox, I guess, than maybe some of the singer-songwriter approach.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a drummer as well. I don't drum for anybody. I just drum at home. Up till about a year and a half ago, when my Great Dane ate my drum kit, my electronic drum kit.
Okay.
So after that, I'm like, you know what? It's time for an upgrade. So now I've been kind of spending time more thinking about what I want to upgrade to.
Right.
Because I like to keep it electronic, so I can just wear headphones
sure.
and play and things like that.
Absolutely.
But I guess to bring it back around with you, did you find that any of your drug use was affecting your music or how you were playing? And did you find more clarity when you got sober? And
Absolutely. And, this is something that I've had to kind of reconcile with as I get older. And, I've been in a couple bands that were going to be successful. And a lot of times it was maybe someone else's drug use or my drug use that kind of disrupted all that. And so, I can speak for myself is that, like, yes, I mean, because of my substance use, I was in a band that was, I believe we really were gaining some momentum and could have been successful. And, I just couldn't get it together. And so, and these guys, they drank but they weren't on my level. And so, I lost that band, and I don't know what they did afterwards, but, it was definitely like, I feel like, for me, music was kind of like when I was a kid and I realized that, like, I wanted superpowers. And when I realized that I wasn't going to get those superpowers, that playing in a band and music was the next best thing for it. And so I had this dream, and I always felt that I would be playing music. I believed it in my heart. And so, that having that dream, I mean, I can still play, right? And, nothing's a closed door on me, but, there were opportunities that I had that were lined up, and it's a little discouraging to have those, kind of put off because of my bad decisions.
yeah.
Right.
Was there anything, I've talked with, a lot of our clients I've done testimonials with and things like that. And sometimes there was like this underlying something from the childhood. Was that a part of what drove you to your substance use, or do you think it was more the environment? So
one of the things I realized that, like, mental health is something that I was better able to manage once I got sober. So, I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. I liked whatever the distraction would be, whether it was, a good day or a bad day. I enjoyed that. But then when I get sober, I got sober because I want to live my life and I want to be happy. And so, through working on myself through like 12 steps or therapy, I've realized that, like, there has been, something in, like, underneath everything that I was going to need to address. And it, for me specifically, and I think everyone has their own story. I'm gay, and I grew up in a Southern Baptist church that, wasn't the most supportive when it comes to this lifestyle. And I remember being young and barely even knowing, like, who I was and why I was the way I was, and being a child and hearing that, pretty much being told that I would be going to hell. And that's just something that a child doesn't need to grow up hearing. And whatever part of me today understands that that's irrational and that I'm loved no matter what, there is always this seed there that was planted a long time ago that tells me that I'm not worthy and that I was born against something and that I'm not natural. And I think that does a number on anyone. That's just my story. I think a lot of people have different backgrounds that have, planted this idea that has somehow kind of been there the whole time. And I think we have to really, really figure out what that is and work on it if we're ever going to truly move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk treatment for a little bit? Because I think
Sure.
you said you went to treatment a number of times.
Yes.
And then, but what being in an industry where we treat people,
Right.
across this country, we have facilities. What would you say the importance of treatment is in for recovery and for long-term recovery?
Right. So for me, it was very difficult for me to get out of this pattern and these behaviors that I had of, changing something each day, like waking up and saying, I'm going to do something different today. It was really easy for me to just continue doing what I was doing, especially if drugs and alcohol were present. It was always available to me. And so I knew that there was something that would need to change one day, but it was hard for me to break that. So what I think treatment is, it's a very good opportunity to kind of put ourselves someplace safe and comfortable, away from those patterns and behaviors that we've been living month over month, year after year, and giving us a fighting chance, because obviously in treatment, these substances are not going to be available. And maybe I just need that little break from that, a week or two, to understand and really reflect like how much it had a hold on me, and how much I had actually impacted other people's lives. And I don't think I was able to do that until I got to treatment and was able to more or less be in a bubble, which in this case I think is a very positive thing, because I needed to be someplace where I was able to start the change. And so that was important for me. And I have been to treatment several times. Again, I'm stubborn. I am one of those people that, had to continually ask myself, I mean, what am I not getting? What do I need to do differently? And it wasn't until I was able to answer that question for myself that I was able to actually move forward productively with my treatment, with my recovery.
Yeah. And a lot of people, excuse me, I think a lot of people think I can just do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stop using whatever it is, whatever substance it is that's, but maybe they can. But there's usually, like we talked about, an underlying issue. And treatment, like with us, we're dual diagnosis facilities, handle both the mental side and, the substance use side of things. What do you say to people that say, no, I can do this on my own?
I would say, why though? Why would you want to do it on your own? That's the first question I would ask. People who say, I've done this before, and I'm like, well, that's great, but if you're able to do something different, like a medically supervised detox, and you have the means to do that and the support from other people to do that, then why would you want to do it by yourself? When you can do it this way, be treated, and also be introduced to other people that are also working on changing, and develop relationships with people. I think maybe, there are people that may have been able to have done this and gotten under control. And if they are successful, then it would make sense that I haven't heard from them. But my experience is not like that. And from what I can tell, most of the people I deal with and helping them get into treatment is they also share that story of trying to do it themselves. And it's very difficult, and the goal is like, we don't want to just help someone get sober. I mean, it's one thing to get sober. It's something entirely different to stay that way.
Right.
So, okay, you've been able to get sober in your past. You've been able to detox yourself. But most people I hear from are usually doing that for a few months and then they go back to it. And so, that's not a way I want to live my life. I did live that way for a long time, and it's not the way I want to do it. The goal is to, physically get these substances cleared from my system. And I'm not any more sober at 6 months than I was the first week or so after I detoxed. So what I want to look at is like, what am I going to do for myself to stay this way? And that's absolutely like mental health, and making sure that I have every resource available to succeed in my recovery.
Yeah. And you mentioned you were in treatment a few times.
Yes.
So obviously
Several.
You relapsed, and you kept going back to treatment, though.
I did.
So obviously, I think you believed that it could work one day. You never gave up on it. Is that right? So
Absolutely.
So in a sense, in your opinion, you would say treatment works.
It does, and I don't think any of my time in treatment was wasted. I feel that I don't feel like we start over from scratch. I believe we start over with experience, and so I gained something each of those times. I have friends that got sober and never relapsed. That's not my story. I'm one that got knocked down and I had to get back up. And that's what I tried to tell everyone is like, it's important to find some kind of hope that can get you to stand back up, and whatever that is. There's no wrong reason really to do the right thing. I'll tell a lot of people, but if we get knocked down 8 times, we get back up over and over again. And the people that get back up are the ones that make it. The ones that don't are, on that path, and who knows where that leads.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about relapse, which is very common. What are some things that you do, to keep yourself focused, keep yourself mindful, so that you don't relapse and go back?
So I feel like I was talking about behaviors and patterns earlier, and breaking those ones that were negative, and now I just replace them with healthy. And for a while, it's sometimes at the beginning it feels like it can be work, but now it's just like a working part of my life. Like, I stay in connection with, I stay connected with people in recovery. I met a lot of people in recovery, and that's who I'm hanging out with now. I'm going with them to concerts, hiking, trips, all of those things. And, it was just important for me, to get going back to treatment and when I needed to, but then also preventing the relapse just by staying on top of myself and making sure that I'm taking care of myself physically and mentally. I mean, if I start to underestimate the alcoholism and the drug addiction, then it will start coming back. So I always need to remain humble and understand that no matter how long I have been sober, it can be taken away from me. So I always try to remain teachable as far as, I can't be at a point where I say, I've got this, because I've been there before and I know what that means. And so the minute I start underestimating how strong my addiction is the minute I start losing my recovery.
Right. Would you say, I hear the routines are very common in recovery. And is there something that you do daily in a routine that could help somebody else that's maybe new in recovery?
I would say at first the biggest thing is community. It's important because I feel like the alcoholism and addiction make us feel alone, and we aren't alone. And so when we get sober, it's important to develop some relationships and some friendships with people and start trusting people again, which is huge, because a lot of us were definitely not around people we really trusted. And we need to give people a chance and allow them to be there for us, because they are. And so, having that a community right when we're sober is important, because that's, who I can call when I'm having a rough day, who I can go have coffee with, someone who understands what it was like for me, because they are also in recovery as well. And so they will maybe have lived through something and stayed sober that I have not. And that can be anything. But, life still continues when we get sober. We still lose loved ones. We lose careers, relationships, all of that. And I've been through that, and I didn't handle it as well. I lost my mom, and I'd been sober for 5 years, and I didn't handle it well. I handled it the best way I could, but, then it stopped working. And so it was important for me to reach back out again. And now I know that I've been around enough people who've stayed sober through life-changing events, and I've seen them do it. And so now I know also that I can survive events like that without seeing drugs or alcohol as a solution.
Yeah. When you did relapse, were you hard on yourself afterwards?
Yes. I think some of us believe that, if we gain this sobriety and then we lose it, that we have somehow failed. And I sat in that for a long time, and I felt that, I was very ashamed of it. And I'm never going to judge. I've learned not to judge anyone or shame anyone who is reaching out for help. I feel that, if someone is reaching out, we need to be there. And I don't want to discourage someone from asking for help again. That's the most important thing people can do. So you only need to be 100 successful at one thing today, and it's reaching out to get help again. And, like I said, there are people that have not relapsed. I know some people like that, but I don't think it should, what we need to do is show that it's okay to reach out and ask for help, and relapse can be a part of some people's stories. But the important thing is to always just get back up.
Yeah, yeah. Would you say that with being in recovery, and now that you're working in an industry where you're helping people, get into treatment and start their journey, did you seek this out?
The job?
Yeah.
I took a jump from a different path and came over to this industry, and I actually took a cut and pay to come do this job initially, and it was because I wanted to do something that I felt was meaningful, and helping other people. That's the main drive for this job. It's one way for me to reconcile the many mistakes that I've made in my life. And to make sense of them is to take if I just relapsed and had consequences and just let them sit there, and even worse, continued the way I was going, I don't think it would amount to much, and I would probably look back at my life and be pretty disappointed. So for me, it's important to have made those mistakes, take them, and then bring them up to the present with me, and use that experience to help other people, because now I can talk to someone who probably identifies a little bit more with me because I've been arrested or for whatever. So that's what I do. I mean, I take those mistakes from the past and kind of use them to reconcile myself today. So I came to the industry for that. It is a lot of work, but ultimately it's where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that does doing this line of work, does it help you at all with your own recovery on a day-to-day basis?
It does. I mean, I am sharing my experience with people, which allows me to go back and, as I mentioned earlier, if I remove myself from that part of my life and that part of who I am, then I've underestimated it, and it can come back, and if I'm not too aware of it. So I am talking about my recovery process, my past, what led me to where I am, and that's important because it's always in the front of my mind. So it does help. It also, I do forget sometimes how chaotic it was. And sometimes I do forget the emotional impact of some of the consequences. And so, sometimes I'll hear people calling and they're in that place where they're at the bottom and they don't really see or have any hope. And so that's where I'm able to come in and be like, I remember that feeling and I was there, but it's important to take that next step and reach out, and you can do this, and life will get better. I've never seen anyone get sober who regretted it. But we just have to make sure that we continue doing those things to take care of ourselves. And the only way to do that is to reach out. And so the people that, hesitate, I can think of every reason to get help now, and I can't think of any reason to put it off. And so it's important to be there for people when they are ready.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you come across some phone calls where you just have these relatable moments. Like someone's probably right where you're How does that, I guess, do you think that benefits getting someone the help that they need?
I know it does. Especially, some of the substances I grew up with were, they weren't, where I ended up at least was more, it was it wasn't like the bright bar scene type of thing. It was more of a darker side. And I'll speak to some people who used some of the same substances that I did. As my drug of choice at the end. And there aren't a whole lot of people that identify with that. And so I'm one of those people that when I get a call from someone, I'm able to connect with them. And, even yesterday someone was like, I haven't talked to anybody that has struggled with this substance. And so I was really able to connect with that person. And it brings a little bit more trust, because, I think that I know for myself, I'm going to be more willing to speak with someone that is able to identify with some of the things that I'm going through.
Yeah, you've been there.
Right.
Probably done that.
Right.
You spoke about community. What about family and family members' roles in let's start with treatment, because a family member can be involved in someone's treatment. Just because you're going to maybe inpatient treatment doesn't mean your family, you lose connection with your family and you can't talk to anybody and you're going away and I won't see you for 30 or 60 days. No, the family plays an important role, right? Can you
Absolutely
kind of touch on that?
Yeah, and so I would feel that I couldn't go without acknowledging the fact that the family does also suffer. And when I was in the midst of my addiction, I wasn't able to see that. I thought to myself, it shouldn't bother you. Nothing I'm doing is impacting you. You wouldn't even know that what I'm doing at each moment of the day. And that was very selfish of me, because, I was able to get sober and then reflect a little bit more. And once asked, after having been sober a little bit, now look back on this and how do you feel this has impacted your family? I was really able to see how much I caused some concern. And so to bring them along in my recovery today is important, and it's important that they're still there, because I know that a lot of people don't have that. And so to not take for granted that I do have a family that cares for me. And there was tough love also. But today I'm able to make my living amends to them, and they see every day who I am versus who I was. And so it's important to strengthen those relationships. And, I was thankful for my family, because they'd come visit me. They would do some of the therapy sessions, like family therapy. And that was really important, because it showed to me that they were interested in understanding where they fit into all of this, and maybe how they enabled me, but then also understanding that, like, what my life, how that viewpoint of like what it was like being someone that is addicted and was driven by substance abuse, and that's my immediate family, my nuclear family doesn't have any of that. And so they've seen some of that through my process and, my recovery. But it's been incredible having the family there. And if people are able to have that, then don't ever take it for granted, for sure. And for the people that don't have family, because I know that's also a lot of people, the greatest gift that can come out of recovery is having true relationships and being able to move forward with that, and understanding that one day you'll know what it's like to be cared for and have true relationships.
When you were going to treatment, were you married at the time, or?
No.
Okay, so my quick question is, what does a spouse, and maybe this is more in recovery for you, what does a spouse's role when someone is going to treatment or recovery? There's some things they should probably learn, right, themselves, about the environment at home and things to do. What are some of those things that you do? So,
I think it's important if we're able to be there for a family member that's struggling, I think that's great. But I also think it's important for the family member to protect themselves. So one of the things I say to the family members that I'm dealing with is, I think it's incredible that you guys are there, and be there as much as you can. But there is you do need to take care of yourself. And that means whatever. Today, go out and do something for yourself, whatever that is, to take a break, because it is a lot being a family member of someone struggling with drugs and alcohol. And I think there are even times when someone might need to step away, and that's to protect themselves. So, those are the programs of like Al-Anon, like where we can learn exactly, my role and how I interact with someone else that's struggling with drugs and alcohol. Fortunately for me, my husband's sober and has been for 10 years. And so I have that kind of support, and it's incredible. But I think it's, again, it's like one of those things where we can't make someone do the right thing. We can be there as much as we can, and let them know that, like, I love you, I'm here for you, but I also have to take care of myself. And so it's in one day, as someone struggling with drugs and alcohol, I understood now some of the decisions my family made, which were upsetting to me at the time, but I realized they were doing what they needed to do to protect themselves. And then they were able to come back around when I finally started taking my recovery seriously.
Yeah. And family shouldn't be a barrier to getting treatment, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think, don't we, at a lot of our treatment centers, offer help to family members? I think that we even have where you can come on site sometimes, and
family therapy.
And learn about things like enabling things that probably they never even knew about, right? I guess if you've got someone on the line and they're making excuses, and one of them is, I can't leave my family. What do you say to that person?
That comes up a lot during the holidays. Like, I don't want to leave my kids during Christmas, and the first thing I ask is, like, is this coming from you or the kids? Because if a loved one asked me if they should stay home for Christmas instead of getting treatment, or they said, well, I don't want to leave for treatment because I know how much you need me here. It's like, we should allow people to answer that themselves. And as a family member, I would be like, no, I think the best thing is for you to go get treatment. That would be the best gift to us all. And so we have to look at how committed we are to getting help. And it is, sometimes it can be a sacrifice to go to treatment. We do, sometimes we don't see our kids or spouses, but we have to look at the bigger picture and what it takes to make a few weeks away to get on the right track so that you can be there for the next Christmas. Because, how many have we missed while being intoxicated or just not there for people? And so I understand the sacrifice can sometimes be hard, but what am I willing to do today that I haven't done in the past to stay sober? And we'll eventually get to that point where we understand that it might be the best thing to go to treatment, and my family will be fine. And when I get out, we'll be all that much stronger.
And sometimes getting out of that environment is probably the best thing. Not for everybody, but in a lot of cases, right?
Right. I mean, I don't think that, sometimes family, it's not, people love being around their families. But it's a good break to go somewhere where we can just focus on ourselves and not have the daily stressors of work or, young children and all of that. And I understand it's important to have resources in place to help take care of them while you're gone. But, we've got to get to the point where we're willing to do whatever it takes to go get help. And that means stepping away, and taking care of ourselves. We're not going to be able to help someone else unless we're able to really take care of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. You've worked in getting people in treatment, what you said, like 4 years or before that?
4 years now.
Some things. But in your experience, in recovery, doing what do you say to somebody that's thinking they might need to call, but that just doesn't, comes up with excuses,
right,
and never makes the call? This isn't somebody that's already called and on the line. This is someone that's, no, I don't think so.
On the fence about it.
Because maybe they don't know, for one, not what to expect. If I call, oh my gosh, if this ball gets rolling, I might actually
they might actually have to get sober.
What do you say to somebody like that,
A lot of times I ask people to play it forward a little bit. I think an important question is to ask someone, like, what are the goals you have for yourself? Whether it be career, relationships, physical goals, whatever it is. And is what you're doing now with the drugs and alcohol, is that in line with the goals you have? And if we're really truthful, the answer is always going to be no. It's not conducive to realizing, our dreams and goals. So for people on the fence, I asked them, like, I can think of, like I said, I can't think of any bad reason to not go today, but I can think of plenty of them, bad reasons to put it off. And so, starting this sooner rather than later, because I don't think there's going to be any, if we're waiting for, the stars to align a correct way to go to treatment, right? It's not going to be like that. We just have to go when we're ready. And, asking someone who's on the fence, if you say you want to go next week, then it becomes the week after that. And the next thing you know, a month, and then 6 months and a year, and you've been doing the same thing for that year. When look how much where you could have been with your recovery if you'd been sober by now. And I've talked to people who have put it off for months, and I'm like, you could have been through treatment 3 times by now, in the amount of time we've talked, and it hasn't gotten any better. So I know they're not having fun. So what is the real reason we're putting it off?
Yeah. What do you think? Or did you have any, in finding sobriety, did you have any revelations about yourself that you were surprised about?
Yes. I realized that, I started to gain confidence, for one. I think I lacked a lot of that when I was younger. And, I think we start doing esteemable acts. And the more we do, the more we start to believe in ourselves. And the more we start being around other people that are, share positive experiences with us and are positive people in general. And we just start to be, we're lifted, more or less. And so I think that's important. To be around that, to make those decisions, and the work it takes. It does take work to stay sober. It becomes easier. But at first we really have to work to figure out, where have I been wrong? When I move forward, do I need to be aware of, like, when I need to make an apology. And, hopefully we get to a point where we've been sober long enough and we've been working on ourselves long enough that we can kind of see these things before we even do them. And I say, well, maybe that might not be the best reaction, or maybe I should think this through before doing this. So I'm able to pause now. And so that's one of the things I've gained from recovery, is the ability to kind of sit back and not overreact, and able to kind of just think about what is the best way that I'm able to move forward with this. And that's definitely something I wasn't able to do before. And I still have a long ways to go. But I'm aware of it, and it's something that I continually work on. Whereas before, I'm not sure I was too concerned with how I was coming across to other people.
Yeah.
Or even in my perception of myself.
Yeah.
So.
Do you still frequent downtown Nashville at all? It's the music scene and all that good stuff.
That was never really my scene.
No.
but I there was a while there where I would have to stay away from. I would go to concerts and I would leave because I would get really depressed, I think, because the whole like that could have been me up there, and that was really hard. And I've gotten past that now, and now I mean, you know, I'm more of like into the indie scene, and you know, the off the beaten path type of unconventional, you know, concerts and venues. And so I go to those a lot, and I go with people that are in recovery. And it's amazing now how I think being sober is a lot more acceptable than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there are a lot of people out there that don't drink, and I mean, I feel completely comfortable going to those concerts if I have a good reason to be there. You know, and then I'm absolutely safe and love going now. And so that's a big part of my life now, is going to see music again, going to concerts, and living my life, you know, the best that I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading something a couple of weeks ago. It was like the gist of the thing was the rise of mocktails, like these alcohol-free
Right.
bars. I think are creating these things.
Right.
They look like drinks, but there's no alcohol in them. Things like
Right.
And I just wonder, since you're not really in the Nashville scene, I was curious. I was curious if there was any changes being made, you know, to that, if those were being introduced, or just maybe what are your thoughts on something that it looks like an alcoholic drink, but it's not. I mean, is that a good thing?
I don't see a problem with it. I mean, I think that, you know, they're on almost every menu now when we go out.
Okay.
I mean, I actually had a mocktail the other night, and it was, I think that I have to really look at my intentions with it, and be honest with myself. So like if I get a 6-pack of, you know, non-alcoholic beers that has a very, very low percentage, but then I drink all 6 consecutively, I might need to ask, like, what is my motive here?
Mm-hmm.
I've pretty much drinking a can of beer, regular beer at that point. So I think that's a gift that comes with being sober for a little while, is I can tell if something is going to be, you know, lead me down the wrong direction or not. And if I have any questions, then I ask, you know, my husband or anyone else in recovery, like, what do you think about this? But generally, I mean, mocktails can be fun. I mean, there are bars now that are specifically only mocktails, and I want them to get as much business as possible.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah. I think years ago somebody talked about maybe those possibly being triggering moments for some people.
Right.
But it doesn't sound like that would be an issue for you.
So there are some that are like non-alcoholic whiskeys that I've tasted, and it is a very familiar taste. And I will say there are some that should probably stay away from if I want to. The thing is, like today, I don't want to put myself in an uncomfortable position if I have to. Like, why would I put myself in a situation where I feel like I might suffer willingly? Why would I put myself in that situation? So if something feels like too close, then I understand that I should probably back off of it and not do that one. But I mean, you know, I've had plenty of them that are more like overpriced juice cocktails, you know, so, but right. I mean, I understand that some people probably need to stay away from them. I think it's up to each person. And as long as they do have like someone they work with, friends, a sponsor, whoever it is, that they are honest with, the minute we start hiding something like that is the minute it can start to grow into something more, I believe.
Right. Very good. Are you from the Nashville area?
No,
or?
I'm actually from Northwest Arkansas.
From Arkansas. No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. I worked out in Little Rock for a little
Oh,
while.
yeah?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked for the National Guard for a little while.
Oh, okay.
And started here, but they moved the whole base over to Little Rock.
Right.
And
Okay.
I tried that for a little bit, but you know, wife and kids didn't really want to move to Little Rock, and we
Okay.
liked this area,
Right.
and so did that for a little while. But the Little Rock area was nice,
Right.
you know. And my son talks about the duck hunting in Arkansas all the time.
Yeah, Stuttgart. I think that's where all the hunting is. Yeah, I was up more in the Ozarks.
Were you?
So my family was more into the deer hunting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would guess that music brought you to Nashville.
Actually, yes, it did. I moved here. Well, I've actually moved here twice. The first time I moved here was with a band, and that fell apart, and I just ended up working. And then the second time I moved here was actually to work for a record label,
Okay.
DreamWorks on Music Row. And that they started. I was hired. I had an internship, and then I was hired. And then I think the same week I was hired, they started shutting down the whole label here in Nashville.
Oh, boy.
Starting with my department. So
Interesting.
yeah, that was another dream that kind of, you know, it was hard to see that come to an end the way it did, which may have led to some of the the depression possibly that where I would seek some kind of solution, and not the healthiest way.
Yeah. What I moved here, I think in 2009 in this area.
Okay.
Man, has this thing blown up, hasn't it?
Yeah. So my second time I moved here was 2002, and I remember living on Halcyon Avenue, right off 12th Avenue, and it was a 2-bedroom house, cottage, hardwood floors, and the total rent was $800. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot has changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a sign saying "The Gulch coming 2010." I remember seeing all these things, and so the way Nashville has changed since I've been here is pretty remarkable.
Because I like live music, but I live down in Murfreesboro.
Okay.
And it used to be going into the city was an easy thing to do. Now it's a nightmare.
Right.
I mean, it's just wall to wall, and so it has to be a really good show that I want to go see.
You're right.
I wish little smaller venues would pop up. Like at one time, they were going to build this amphitheater down in Murfreesboro, and I was like,
Right.
"Oh my gosh, this is so great!" And then they even had the sign up.
Yeah.
And then they axed it. I wish more music venues would start to branch out, so you don't have to fight. I mean, maybe I sound old or something.
No, I get it. I think we're getting there. I think there are some developments here. A new development in the Yards, which is that new area in downtown, and there's another one going in the Wedgwood, Houston area. So they are coming, and they're like smaller venues. I think that seat like maybe 1,000, 2,000, and then of course there are all the hidden little gems where dive bars that
Right.
will have some bands playing. But I'm with you though. I mean, like especially going downtown, like I'm not going to go down there unless it's in a whole event. Like we're going to park, we're going to pay
Right.
however much for parking. So I want to have a good meal. I want to go see a good concert and make an evening out of it if I'm going to go down there.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of music did you play?
So I would guess it would be like kind of experimental indie rock.
Okay.
So definitely guitars, but then also an electronic aspect to it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you coming in and
Yeah,
doing
of
this,
course.
man. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
I appreciate it. Nice to meet you as well.